For years, millions of Tensura fans believed Milim had always been the same. An impulsive demon lord. Unbelievably powerful. Completely unpredictable. But there's one detail the anime barely explained. Milim wasn't born that way. In fact, there was one moment that completely shattered her life. One single event. Gaia's death. And once you discover who Gaia really was, you realize he was never just another dragon. He was Milim's last connection to her family. And perhaps the greatest tragedy in the entire history of Tensura. But before we continue, I want to hear your opinion. If Gaia had never died, do you think Milim would have become the same demon lord we know today? Because the light novel reveals details that completely change the story. Everything begins long before Rimuru was born. Long before the Jura Tempest Federation even existed. It all starts with Veldanava, the very first true dragon. The being who gave birth to the world itself. For a long time, Veldanava was seen as a godlike existence. A being far above every other living creature. But there's one detail that completely changes that image. Unlike the other true dragons, Veldanava made a choice no one expected. He chose to live like an ordinary person. He fell in love with Lucia, married her, and together they had a daughter, Milim Nava, the girl who would one day become one of the most powerful demon lords in history. But that happiness didn't last long. Shortly after Milim was born, Lucia died, and soon after, Veldanava disappeared as well. In just a matter of days, Milim lost both of her parents. She was left completely alone. But there's another detail that almost nobody knows. Before disappearing, Veldanava made one final decision. He used the last of his remaining power to create a new dragon. That dragon was named Gaia. And this is the first major revelation. Gaia was never created to fight. He wasn't created to protect the world. He wasn't created to replace Veldanava. He was born for a much simpler reason. To keep Milim company. Do you see how that changes everything? When the anime introduces Gaia, most viewers see nothing more than another dragon. But the light novel tells a completely different story. To Milim, Gaia was family. He was the final gift her father left behind. The last connection to the happy life she had lost. The two of them grew up together. They played together. Explored the world together. Gaia wasn't just a pet. He was her closest friend. Her constant companion. The only family she had left after Veldanava disappeared. And that's exactly why what happened next was so devastating. Because there were people watching Milim. People who understood one very important thing. No one could defeat her in a direct battle. She was simply too powerful. So instead of attacking Milim, they attacked the one thing that truly mattered to her. Gaia. And in that single moment, the entire history of Tensura changed forever. Because Gaia didn't just die as a dragon. His death took away the last family Milim had left. And when that happened, something inside her completely broke. But that wasn't even the worst part. Because what happened after Gaia's death would create the Milim that the entire world would eventually fear. But what happened next was even worse. Consumed by grief, by guilt, and by the loss of the only family she had left, Milim completely lost control. In that moment, she awakened a power no one believed could exist. A power so overwhelming that it erased an entire kingdom from the map. Millions of lives were lost. Not because Milim wanted to conquer the world. Not because she was evil. But because she simply couldn't bear Gaia's death. And perhaps that's the biggest detail the anime rushed through. Many fans believe Milim became a demon lord simply because she was incredibly powerful. But the truth is far more tragic. She was born from pain. From grief. From loneliness. And from losing the last person she still called family. But there's another detail that almost nobody notices. Gaia's death wasn't just the fall of a dragon. It marked the complete end of Veldanava's family. First Lucia, then Veldanava, and finally, Gaia. In an incredibly short time, Milim lost absolutely everything. And maybe that's why, even centuries later, she still hides the most vulnerable part of herself. Because behind the cheerful and unpredictable demon lord, there's still a little girl who never truly recovered from that loss. But that still doesn't explain everything. Because Gaia's story didn't end that day. In reality, it simply changed. After his death, His soul and spiritual core suffered devastating damage. As time passed, his very existence became corrupted. And that's how the Chaos Dragon was born. At first glance, it looks like nothing more than a mindless dragon. A creature driven only by instinct, by destruction, by chaos. But once you learn its true origin, you realize you're looking at the same Gaia. The dragon who once played beside Milim. The dragon who was supposed to grow up with her. Only now, completely transformed by tragedy. And somehow, that makes the story even sadder. Because, in a way, even death wasn't enough to bring Gaia peace. But there's one final piece to this puzzle. When Rimuru encounters Gaia, he does something that separates him from almost everyone else in that world. While others see nothing but a monster that must be destroyed, Rimuru tries to save him. He wants to understand the source of that suffering. And that decision perfectly reflects who Rimuru has always been. From the very beginning of the series, he has never searched only for victory. He searches for a solution, even when saving someone seems impossible. And that's exactly why Gaia's appearance is so important. Not because of his strength, not because he's one of the most powerful dragons in Tensura, but because his existence connects some of the most important events in the entire history of the series. He reminds us of Veldanava, of Milim's childhood, of the birth of a demon lord, and of how a single loss can change the fate of the entire world. That's why Gaia was never just another dragon. He was Veldanava's final gift to his daughter, the last thread connecting Milim to the family she had lost, and at the same time, the greatest tragedy she would ever experience. Maybe that's why light novel readers reacted so differently when Gaia finally appeared in the anime. Because once you know the full story, you realize Gaia was never important because of how powerful he was. He was important because of the emptiness his death left behind. And perhaps, without Gaia's death, the Milim we know today would have never existed. Now I want to hear your opinion. Did you already know Gaia's true story? Or did you also think he was just another powerful dragon? Let me know in the comments. Because one thing is certain. After learning everything that really happened, it's impossible to look at Gaia the same way again.